It was the kind of night that made even the bravest souls uneasy. The rain poured down in heavy sheets, drumming against the pavement, drowning out all other sounds, except for the occasional distant roll of thunder. The streets were nearly empty, the city asleep, save for a few flickering streetlights casting long ghostly shadows. David Lawson, a self-made millionaire, was driving home in his sleek, black sedan. He had just left an exclusive charity event, one of those fancy gatherings, where everyone smiled politely but never really listened. His mind was elsewhere, thinking about nothing in particular, just eager to get home, change into something comfortable, and maybe pour himself a drink. As he turned onto a deserted road, something caught his eye. A small figure, barely visible through the rain, stood near the sidewalk. At first, David wasn't sure what he was seeing. Maybe just another shadow cast by the streetlights. But then he heard it. A scream, high-pitched, desperate. A voice calling for help. His hands tightened. On the steering wheel, 100 thoughts raced through his mind in an instant. Was this real? A setup? Something dangerous? The logical side of him told him to keep driving. This wasn't his problem. But then, another scream. Louder this time. Without thinking, David slowed down and pulled over, his headlights illuminating the boy standing in the downpour. The kid couldn't have been older than 10, soaking wet, his clothes clinging to his small frame, shivering uncontrollably. His face was streaked with rain, but the terror in his eyes was unmistakable. David rolled down the window just enough to speak. "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" The boy hesitated for a moment before taking a step closer. His voice was shaky, barely audible over the rain. "Please, help me." David's heart pounded. Something about the way the boy spoke, his raw fear, made it impossible to ignore. He pushed open the car door and stepped out, rain soaking through his expensive suit in seconds. "What's wrong? Where are your parents?" The boy shook his head frantically. "They're gone. I need help. Please." David glanced around. The street was empty. No sign of anyone else. He looked back at the boy, now visibly trembling, his hands clenched into fists, as if trying to hold himself together. "Gone?" David repeated, kneeling slightly to meet the boy's eyes. "What do you mean gone? Did you get lost?" The boy swallowed hard. "No, they took them. I ran away, but they took them." David felt a cold chill, not from the rain, but from something deeper. Something in the boy's voice. He wasn't making this up. This wasn't a lost kid who had wandered too far from home. This was something else. Something real. David's instinct screamed at him to get back in the car, drive away. Let someone else handle this. But the boy, so small, so scared, was standing in front of him, alone in the middle of the night, begging for help. And David Lawson, a man who had spent years building his empire, making deals, and living in luxury, found himself faced with a choice he never expected. Stay and find out the truth, or leave and never know what might have happened to that boy in the rain. David's breath came in short, uneasy bursts as he stared at the boy, his mind racing. The rain continued to pour, soaking them both, but it was the boy's words that sent a different kind of chill through him. They took them. Who? Why? And why was this kid alone in the middle of the night? David glanced up and down the street, expecting to see someone, anyone, running toward them, calling for the boy, but there was nothing. Just darkness and rain. Turned back to the boy, whose wide, fearful eyes locked onto his. "Who took them?" David asked, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Who are you talking about?" The boy hesitated, his small hands gripping the sleeves of his soaked hoodie. He looked over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. "Bad people," he whispered. "They came to our house. My mom told me to run, so I did." His voice cracked. "I don't know what happened to her." David felt something twist in his chest. He had been prepared for a lost kid, maybe even a runaway. But this was something else entirely. This was danger. He looked at his car, then back at the boy. Every part of him knew he was about to make a decision that could change the course of his night, maybe even his life. "Get in," he said, pulling open the passenger door. The boy hesitated for only a second before scrambling inside, dripping, water all over the leather seats. David slid into the driver's seat, shutting the door as another gust of wind sent rain slamming against the windshield. For a moment, there was only silence. The sound of their breathing, the occasional drip of water from their clothes. David turned on the heater, hoping to warm the kid up. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy swallowed hard. "Liam." "Okay, Liam," David said, keeping his voice steady. "Do you know where they took your mom?" Liam shook his head, his eyes darting to the window. "I just ran. I didn't know where to go. I just kept running." His small fingers gripped the seatbelt. I thought maybe someone would help." David exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't a hero. He was just a businessman who had spent his life making sure his world was controlled, organized, predictable. This was the opposite of everything he knew, but he couldn't ignore it. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. "We need to call the police," he said. Liam's head snapped up. "No." His voice was sharp, panicked. "We can't." David frowned. "Why not? They can help." "No, they won't," Liam interrupted. His hands were shaking again. "They know." David's stomach tightened. "Know what?" Liam pressed himself back against the seat, his breathing uneven. "I heard them talking," he whispered. "They said no one would believe us. That, even if we told the police, it wouldn't matter. That they had people everywhere." David stared at him. The rain outside suddenly felt heavier, pressing against the car like an unspoken warning. "Liam," he said carefully. "Who are these people?" Liam hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. "But my mom, she told me once that if anything ever happened, I had to run. That there were people who wanted something from her." David's mind spun with possibilities. Was it money? Something criminal? Witness protection? He had no idea. But one thing was clear. This wasn't random. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Okay," he said finally. "Then we won't call the cops." Liam's shoulders relaxed slightly, though the fear never left his eyes. David started the car. He didn't know where he was going yet, but one thing was certain. He couldn't just drop the kid off somewhere and pretend this never happened. As he pulled onto the road, headlights flashed in his rearview mirror. A black SUV turned the same corner he had just taken. David's instincts flared. The SUV wasn't speeding, wasn't doing anything suspicious, except for the way it stayed at a perfect distance behind them. His pulse quickened. "Liam," he said, his voice low. "Did anyone follow you?" Liam turned, looking out the back window. The second he saw the SUV, his breath hitched. "That's them." David didn't wait. He pressed his foot down on the gas, his car surging forward. The SUV matched his speed. This wasn't just about Liam's mother anymore. Now they were after both of them. David's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as his heart pounded in his chest. The SUV behind them was keeping pace, its headlights shining bright through the rain-soaked streets. He didn't know who they were, but one thing was clear. They weren't planning on letting him or Liam go. Liam was frozen in his seat, his wide eyes darting between the road and the mirror. "What do we do?" he whispered. David didn't have an answer. He had spent years making split-second decisions in business deals, knowing when to take risks and when to walk away. But this wasn't a deal. This was life or death. "Hold on," David muttered, pressing down on the gas. The car sped forward, tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement. He took a sharp turn onto a side street, barely missing a red light. The SUV followed. David's mind raced. He couldn't keep running forever. He needed a plan. Then, a thought hit him. His old warehouse. It was a property he barely used anymore, tucked away in an industrial area. More importantly, it had security cameras and a hidden entrance. If they could get there, he might have a chance to figure out who these people were and why they wanted Liam so badly. He made another sharp turn, the SUV still close behind. "We're going somewhere safe," he told Liam, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just stay low." Minutes later, David's car skidded to a stop in front of the warehouse. He jumped out, grabbing Liam's hand and pulling him toward the side door. The SUV screeched to a halt behind them, doors slamming as figures stepped out into the rain. David's fingers fumbled with the keypad. Come on, come on! Finally, the lock clicked open, and he shoved Liam inside, slamming the door behind them, turned just in time to see dark figures moving toward the entrance. He had seconds, maybe less. "Stay behind me," he told Liam, grabbing a metal pipe from the workbench. His pulse was racing, his body tense. He had never been in a situation like this before. The door burst open. 2 men stepped in, dressed in black, their expressions cold and unreadable. "You shouldn't have interfered, Mr. Lawson," one of them said, his voice calm, almost casual. David's stomach dropped. They knew his name. "Let the boy go," David said, keeping his stance firm. "He's just a kid." The man smirked. "It's not that simple." He took a step forward. "Liam's mother took something from us, something valuable, and we need it back." Liam clutched David's sleeve. "I don't know what they're talking about," he whispered. David's mind raced. If Liam's mother had something these people wanted, then she was still alive, at least for now. "I don't have whatever you're looking for," David said, "but I do have security cameras and live feeds. So if you do anything to us, the footage goes straight to the authorities." The men exchanged glances. They hadn't expected that. David took a slow step forward, keeping his voice level. "You want whatever she took. Then you need the boy alive. So let us go, and I'll help you find her." It was a gamble, but it worked. The men hesitated, then nodded. "You have 24 hours, the leader said. "If you don't deliver, we come back, and next time we won't be so patient." With that, they turned and disappeared into the night. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Liam was still gripping his arm, his body trembling. "We're not going to help them, are we?" Liam asked, his voice small. David looked down at him. "No," he said firmly. "We're going to find your mum before they do." And in that moment, David knew. His life had just changed forever. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about money or success. He was thinking about something far more important: doing the right thing.